If you're preparing to come to Vietnam, you want to make most of your time here. After all, it's a country filled with all kinds of amazing places, but it's also pretty big, and getting around it certainly takes time. Depending on your length of stay, budget, and other preferences, you can find various forms of transportation that will help you get where you want to be. But finding the best option often requires research, and relying solely on photos and internet reviews might not be enough to make a good decision. I've traveled all across Vietnam, and I want to share my experiences with you to help you have the best time while you're here. But let's get to the specifics. Number 1. Planes. I'll be honest with you, I avoid planes whenever I can. They're not my preferred form of transportation because I just like looking out the window of a train or bus. That being said, if you're on a tighter schedule, planes can be an amazing way to cover a lot of ground in a small amount of time. A plane between Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi takes around 2 hours, while the quickest train or bus I could find is about 33 hours. That's a giant difference. Even if you factor in time spent getting to the airport, getting through security, and all the other stuff associated with airports, it's just hard to compare the two. In the land ruled by the sleeper bus, planes are obviously going to be a more expensive form of transportation, but you can always look for deals on Want2Go Asia, Skyscanner, and all of the other flight search websites. Popular airline choices include Vietjet Air for low-cost option and Vietnam Airlines. Full disclosure, I haven't flown on Vietjet Air, but I've heard a lot of stuff about them, including a lot of negative reviews on the internet, so please do more research before booking a flight with them. In my personal plane travels across Southeast Asia, I found that delays are also a pretty frequent thing here. My sample size is pretty small, but I think I've been delayed on every single flight that I had here. Number 2, trains. I love trains, and if I could, I would travel by rail on every possible occasion. You can travel through most of Vietnam by train, especially along the coast, as Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi are connected by the Reunification Express train. Due to Vietnam's geography, a full journey from one city to another is almost 2,000 kilometers, and with the lack of a true high-speed rail system, the journey takes about 33 to 36 hours. If you're willing to put up with the standard of the train, there's certainly a lot of charm to this journey. Vietnam's countryside is beautiful, and long train journeys have an amazing feel to them. You can, of course, do it in several chunks, stopping along the way. In fact, utilizing the railway system to dictate your destinations is an easy and reliable way to structure a trip throughout Vietnam. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the comfort of Vietnamese trains, especially on longer journeys. Generally speaking, there are 3 types of carriages available. Second class seat with AC, second class sleeper, 6 beds per compartment, and a first class sleeper, 4 beds per compartment. Some, but not all train lines also offer 2-person compartments. If you're traveling with a group, especially around 4 or 6 people, I would recommend to book the train tickets as early as possible so that you and your travel companions can enjoy sleeping in one single compartment altogether. As a default, I would recommend the 4-person compartment. They're a little bit less cramped than the 6-person ones, especially if you're traveling around with a lot of luggage. Each cabin is equipped with a little table, and each bed has an individual light and 1 USB port for charging your phone or other equipment. There should also be electrical outlets under the table. Beds are okay in terms of comfort, and they come with a pillow and blanket. They're not too bad, but they're nothing to write home about either. As far as the rest of the carriage is concerned, the first class 4-bed carriages should come equipped with a Western style toilet as well as a separate sink area. They're okay in terms of cleanliness, but as is with train toilets, they can be a little bit smelly. Every carriage also has a hot water dispenser at one end, which you can use for instant ramen, I assume. The 6-person carriages have a squat toilet instead of a Western style one, and the cleanliness of those, from what I've seen, is slightly worse. There's usually a snack and drink cart passing through every couple of hours, and in our train there was also a soup cart. The train makes a couple of longer stops during which you can get out of the train, stretch your legs a little bit, and buy something to eat or drink if you want. For shorter train journeys, a second class seat with AC is more than enough. I don't really have much to say about it. The carriages are quite okay in terms of comfort. They're really no different from a lot of trains around the world. One thing to note, if you want the best views, especially around the Da Nang to Hue section along the Hai Van Pass, try to position yourself on the right-hand side if you're traveling north, and on the left-hand side if you're traveling south. Although this doesn't always work when booking on the website, the seating chart isn't actually completely clear. When I booked a train on the Heritage Line from Da Nang to Hue, I was sure that I booked seats on the right-hand side, and it turned out that the seating arrangement was actually flipped in our train carriage, making us sit on the left-hand side during a northbound travel, which meant that the views of the coastline were on the other side of the carriage. The official website of Vietnam Railways is dsvn.vn. When you Google words like Vietnam train, Airlines or Vietnam Railway, you'll often find a lot of websites that try to pose as the official website, so keep that in mind when going online and only look at the official website, as the other ones will sell you tickets at inflated prices. Number 3. Sleeper buses. No journey to Vietnam is truly complete without a night spent on a sleeper bus. And if you don't know what sleeper buses are yet, let me explain. Sleeper buses are a long distance, usually overnight buses with small built-in sleeping pods. They're a very popular form of transportation, usually with the younger tourist crowd and also a lot of locals, and there is a ton of them. If you need to get somewhere around Vietnam, chances are there's a sleeper bus that goes there. First, let's talk about the standards of sleeper buses available. First is the bed corridor bed configuration. These buses have a corridor in the middle with sleeping pods on either side of the bus. They're a little bit more spacious, at least in the width department, and thus usually a little bit more expensive. Second style is the bed corridor bed configuration. These buses are a little bit less comfortable. The beds are quite narrow to accommodate for the extra middle row, and the corridors are also very narrow. Some buses also feature 2 extra beds at the very end, making the bottom back row essentially a sort of communal sleeping area. You can usually identify this type of sleeper bus by the company that operates it. I've only seen the 3-pod configuration on the bright orange Futa bus lines, so if you want to avoid that, then I would avoid their buses. If you have the cash, I'd recommend getting the 2-pod configuration. They're only slightly more expensive, and in my opinion, sleeping in the middle row can be pretty difficult, especially on the top bunk, as you feel like you can fall out at any time. Most buses are also equipped with a USB port for charging your phone or other devices, as well as individual lights. Some buses will also have a screen and a 3.5mm headphone jack to watch some movies during your trip. There are, however, certain downsides to traveling on the sleeper bus. Number 1 is the lack of onboard bathrooms. This isn't a 100% occurrence, but most sleeper buses will not feature a bathroom. Instead, roughly every 3 hours, the bus will make a rest stop. During the rest stop, you can obviously use the bathroom, but what it also means is that the bus makes a stop, all the lights light up, and some companies even have a pretty loud announcement when stopping at any rest stop, meaning that at best you can get about 3 hours of uninterrupted sleep. Secondly, it can be a tiny bit difficult to sleep. If you're a very light sleeper, chances are you're not catching a lot of sleep on a sleeper bus. The roads in Vietnam are usually okay, but they can be a little bumpy, and also some drivers drive like their life depends on getting to the destination as fast as humanly possible, making for an even less smooth ride. Horn use is also pretty common in Vietnam, so the roads can be quite noisy even at night. I personally haven't had any terrible bus ride in Vietnam. I've had some good ones, I've had some mediocre ones, so unless you're an extremely light sleeper and need access to a bathroom at all times, I think you should be fine on a sleeper bus. Also, one more thing, on some sleeper buses, they don't really fully dim the lights during the night. I've had one situation where I had a rainbow LED on the outside of my window, and the curtain that comes with the sleeping pod was actually pretty transparent, fortunately. I had a sleeping mask, which made the whole situation much better. So if you're planning on using the sleeper buses a lot, I would recommend you to get a sleep mask, just to be sure that you don't end up in a situation where there's too much light for you to actually fall asleep. There are also some other things to keep in mind if you're traveling on the sleeper bus. First of all, shoes are not permitted on board. You have to take them off and put them in a bag when you're getting on the bus. At rest stops, most buses will provide you with flip-flops to wear, which you return when you get back on the bus after using the bathroom or grabbing a snack. If you don't want to wear public flip-flops, consider carrying your own flip-flops with you, or just grab your shoes when going out, put them on, and then put them back in the bag when you're getting back on the bus. Also, pack plenty of snacks and water, but try not to drink too much. Holding it in for 3 hours on a bumpy ride is not fun. In terms of food, there is usually one longer rest stop, usually about 30 to 45 minutes, something like that, and they're scheduled so that they take place in a place that has a restaurant or a canteen, I guess. From my experiences, the hygiene of those places is adequate at best, so use your own judgment when deciding whether or not to eat there. Overall, I think that a sleeper bus provides a nice balance between price and comfort, and it makes covering long distances in Vietnam very affordable. If you're taking a non-sleeper bus on a shorter route, there really isn't much to say about them, in my opinion. The bus experience is pretty similar to what you could expect in the rest of the world. One thing to note when booking through Want2Go Asia and other websites, if you're looking at non-sleeper buses, look for the word limousine on the actual booking. These buses are sometimes not full-length buses with luggage compartments. compartments, but rather 9 or 13-seater vans that have a trunk at the back, which means a lot less space for your luggage, so keep that in mind if you're traveling with a lot of backpacks or suitcases. Lastly, if you're preparing to travel through Southeast Asia, be sure to download Want2Go Asia onto your phone. But for Vietnam specifically, I found that the app called Vexaray offers a little bit more bus connections. I don't know why, but it's good to have them both on your phone when checking for bus connections. Number 4, private cars. If you want a little bit more comfort away from other people, most of Vietnam can also be traversed with the use of a private car. This is obviously going to be a tad pricier than other forms of transportation, but if you're traveling with a group of 2 or 3 people, it can be less expensive than you actually think. On shorter routes, like Da Nang to Hoi An, for example, you can easily just book a car through Grab, and if you're looking for connections on some longer routes, just go to Want2Go Asia. There's a section for private cars there, so this level of comfort exists if you feel like you need it. Plenty of hotels or travel agents will also facilitate getting a private car if you want to, no matter if it's for sightseeing or getting from one city to another. Even if they don't have it listed clearly anywhere, be sure to just ask. I've noticed that a lot of things become possible if you just ask for them. Number 5, driving. If you're interested in traveling to Southeast Asia and also use the internet, chances are you stumbled upon people who talk about traveling through Southeast Asia on a motorbike. I personally think that scooters and motorbikes are a wonderful way to experience Vietnam. Having your own form of transportation is a really liberating experience, and with most of the vehicles on Vietnamese roads being scooters, you also get the feeling that you're experiencing the country the way it should be done. There are, however, some things to consider before you decide to embark on such a journey. You certainly need a driver's license to drive legally around Vietnam, and a normal car license will allow you to rent bikes up to 50cc, which is fine if you plan to do some light sightseeing, but might not be enough if you're traveling with a passenger or if you plan to do some long distance traveling. In other words, ideally, you also need a motorbike license from your home country. Then, you also need an international driver's permit. There are 2 kinds of international driver's licenses, and only one of them is accepted in Vietnam. That's the 1968 Vienna Convention International Driver's Permit, which you need to get from your home country. Lastly, there's also the matter of insurance, which is something you should discuss with the rental place, and also have some additional traveler's insurance for yourself. Second of all is the matter of skill. If you've never driven a scooter or motorbike before, I would advise against jumping off the deep end and embarking on a cross-country road trip, but it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy driving a scooter at all. Instead of making driving a form of transportation, make it a sightseeing activity. When you reach a destination where you'll be staying for a couple of days, map out all your sightseeing, rent a scooter, and drive away. Just don't try that in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City if you've never driven a scooter before. Start with a much smaller town. The third thing to consider when deciding whether or not you want to drive in Vietnam are the traffic laws. If you come from a Western country where driving is a rather organized and a rule-governed activity, coming to Vietnam and experiencing the way people drive here can come as a bit of a shock. The sheer number of scooters is one thing, but also the relaxed approach of local people to using roads is another. You need to be prepared to accept this style of driving if you want to drive around here, and this means being used to and prepared for things like people driving on the side of the road against traffic, people just driving straight onto an intersection with no real way to govern who has the right of way at any given moment, people using roundabouts just like regular intersections, no signaling when making lane changes or turns, making turns from lanes where you're not supposed to, and also many other unpredictable things. What this really means is that even having scooter or motorbike experience from your home country does not guarantee that you will like driving in Vietnam. As such, if this is your first time in Southeast Asia or Vietnam, if you have no experience with local traffic and little to no experience with driving a motorbike in general, I would advise against structuring your whole trip around the idea of a motorbike journey. I know of people who took the plunge and did that and they had a great time, but I also know from personal experience that my girlfriend, who loves road trips and driving, did not enjoy driving in Southeast Asia at all. My proposition in this case is to instead include driving a motorbike as an option, but not a necessity during your trip. Rent a scooter for a couple of days, go out sightseeing and see if you like it. Maybe try driving through the hills surrounding Dalat and grab a drink in a cafe overlooking tea and coffee plantations, or go on a day trip from Hoi An to the ruins of My Son. Doing this will allow you to enjoy the liberating experience of driving on your own while in a foreign country, but you won't have to worry about getting from point A to point B in time, as well as carrying your luggage with you while driving. This is it for today. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I will try to answer all of them the best I can, and see you around.